It began with sirens fading into the wet dark, the sound New York makes when it pretends not to notice a crime. Rain gathered on the East River like a sheet of glass somebody forgot to shatter. I was bleeding under my coat. Nothing dramatic, just a slow, stubborn warmth beneath the ribs that kept asking me to sit down and negotiate. I didn't. You don't sit in my world unless the chair is yours. 3 blocks south of Delancey, I found light behind fogged glass, cruise flowers, hand-painted letters that looked older than the lease. Inside, a woman with dark hair twisted into a loose knot was trimming stems at a narrow counter. She moved like someone who refused to hurry for anybody. I pushed the door. The bell gave a soft chime that didn't belong to the hour or the neighborhood. She looked up, and her eyes did that New York thing, half caution, half X-ray. They landed on the blood at my side and didn't blink. "You're hurt," she said, her voice low and unafraid. "I need a minute," I answered, my vowels carrying the old Staten Island limestone and the Italian I'd never quite rinsed from my tongue. She held me there for a heartbeat, making a decision without asking my permission. Then she nodded toward the curtain at the back. "Through here." The workspace smelled like wet stems, clean water, and wood that remembered better tenants. She passed me a folded towel and pointed to a stool. I pressed the cloth to my side and watched her not watch me, the kind of privacy that feels like generosity. "What's your name?" she asked, filling a vase at the deep sink. "Adrian." "No last name?" "Not one I should give you." Something in her mouth twitched, not a smile. Control. She took the towel when I was done and rinsed it without commenting on the red cloud in the sink. I stood and felt my legs remember their job. "Thank you," I said, and for the first time all night, told the truth. I went back the next morning because gratitude is a ritual I still respect. I went back the day after because I couldn't stop thinking about the steadiness in her eyes. She was Elena, owner, upstairs tenant, guardian of a shop that smelled like a reason to behave. She drank her coffee black and lined up her clippers at an angle like punctuation. She had rules about roses, cut on the bias, water cold, never crowd them, and a rule about men that I learned slowly: don't waste my time with polite lies. "Danger follows you," she said one evening while flipping the open sign to closed. "It sticks to you like rain. And yet you keep letting me in," I said. "For now." The power went out across the block a week later. Con Ed, a transformer, the usual excuses. Cruise flowers became 6 candles and a city humming outside the glass. Petals warmed in the flicker and released a sweetness that made the shop feel like church after everybody's gone home. I watched her sort a handful of stems by touch. When she looked up and caught me staring, neither of us corrected the distance. I reached for a loose strand of her hair and tucked it gently behind her ear. "Elena," I said, like I was trying on the right pronunciation of my own life. "You should go," she whispered, not moving. "It's late." Late is the only time I have. I kissed her like a careful confession, every second deliberate. Her hands found my shoulders, not pulling me close, steadying me, as if she knew the floor I was used to walking had a habit of tilting. Outside, a car rolled past, bass low, trouble looking for a door. Inside, the candles hissed, and we stood in a room where the world had the decency to wait. I didn't tell her my last name. In this city, names are doors and debts. I told her small, exact truths instead, that I didn't like loud rooms, but lived in them, that I knew the smell of gun oil better than aftershave. That mornings were easier if I was the one to make coffee. She didn't ask me what I did. She asked me who I was when nobody was watching. I told her I wasn't sure, and she nodded like uncertainty was the first honest thing I'd said in months. Truth came anyway. It always does. She found her brother's case in a city database that had no business being public. 5 years old, 1 paragraph, 2 lies, and a footnote. Intergang crossfire, uncooperative witnesses. The detective's name was familiar: Carter, A cop who carried his badge like a confession. The shooting had a surname behind it. Mine. When I pushed open the door that day, Elena was at the counter with both hands flat, elbows locked, like she was holding the building together by will. "You were there," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Did you—" "I didn't pull the trigger that killed him." I swallowed. "That doesn't make me innocent." Her eyes closed, opened, sharpened. "Do you know what it feels like to love the man who destroyed your family? Do you know what it feels like to be ordered to destroy the only good thing in your life?" I said, and hated myself for the shape of the sentence as it left me. We stood very still while the after silence rearranged the furniture in our chests. I left. I did the job my father trained me for. I negotiated with men who mistake fear for respect. I wore suits that cost more than an apology and came home smelling like the kind of money that ruins people. On the third morning, I couldn't breathe the version of air that didn't include her. I went back with my hands empty. "I won't ask you to forgive what I can't undo," I said. "Then don't ask," she answered. "Just don't lie." "I will be late," I told her. "I will be dangerous. I will bring weather without names to your door." "I've lived through storms," she said. "It's the people who try to be weather you have to survive." We started again, at the next honest place. We made a small life between big dangers. I learned the rhythm of opening the gate, sweeping the sidewalk, and turning the back lights on before the front. She taught me the names of flowers that looked like feelings: peonies for regret, ranunculus for second chances, gardenias for promises somebody intends to keep. We walked down to the river some nights and leaned on the rail while the city rattled behind us. She slid her hand inside my coat. I set my chin on her hair. We breathed like people practicing a future. The war, because you have to call it what it is, escalated. A rival crew with out-of-town investors tried to buy our blocks one corner at a time. They brought new eyes, new guns, and old stupidity. I met them in a warehouse by the Navy Yard that used to smell like oranges and now smelled like metal and lies. We left with blood that didn't belong to us and a clock that had been wound too tight. My father poured whiskey like a eulogy and didn't toast. He's a man who loves with control. "Leave the girl," he said, not looking at me. "She's a handle they can grab." "No. She's leverage." "She's mine," I said, and felt how juvenile and holy that sounded. "And I don't like the man I am without her." He breathed once, slowly. "Then make sure the handles are sharp." They came for us on a Tuesday afternoon, because Tuesdays sound like paperwork until they bleed. Two men in decent suits walked into Cruz Flowers, with smiles that wanted to be counted. The bell tolled on them. "We're here to pay respects," the taller one said, eyes sliding across Elena like a price tag. "Hospitality is for guests," she answered, snipping twine without looking up. "Are you guests?" "There's always room for friends." "There isn't," I said, stepping from behind the refrigerated case. They moved. We moved faster. We had practiced. Deadbolts, angles, which light switch turned the front into shadow and the back into a stage. The first man learned about shears. The second learned about elbows and the geography of knees. Elena didn't scream. She held the line, voice steady, eyes sharper than the metal in her hand. After, we slid down the door together and let our breathing find the same tempo. "We did what we rehearsed," she said. "You weren't supposed to have to." "None of us are," she said. "And yet—" Carter called that night from an unlisted number that pretended to be a wrong turn. "You're outpacing my paperwork," he said. "There's a new investor behind your rivals. Likes to buy blocks and men. He'll make it personal soon." "It already is." "Then you know what to do," he said, and hung up before either of us had to admit we cared. I told my father I was leaving. He didn't shout. He watched me like a craftsman inspects a blade he didn't want to make. "You'll be hunted," he said. Not forever. Long enough. I know. You'll be a man, not a rumor. The name won't cover you. I know. Then go, he said. And if you come back as yourself. Elena stood at the counter when I told her. She touched the edge of the wood like she was testing the strength of a bridge. I have a shop, she said. You have hands, I answered. You can turn a parking lot into a garden. We made leaving into a modest heist. Cash, documents, a fallback phone. I taught her the false name that fit my face well enough to pass a bored clerk. She showed me the back stair that nobody but tenants used if they wanted to live long. We left keys with Mrs. Pirelli, who'd been buying lilies every Friday for as long as grief could keep a schedule. They tried us at the corner where Clinton forgets itself. Two men stepped from a car that believed in its own tint. I took a wrist and told it a different story. Elena did exactly what we practiced. Step, turn, brake, vanish. We ran toward a sedan that hadn't betrayed us yet and made the engine believe. We crossed the bridge like a dare. Queens fell behind us. Long Island spread out in patient strips of light. In the rear view, the city looked like a myth somebody forgot to finish. What do we call this? She asked, eyes on the wet lanes ahead. Leaving. And after leaving? Arriving, I said. Eventually. We rented a small house in a town that hadn't learned how to hurry, a yard with soil that wanted to be forgiven, a front step that agreed with our shoes. Elena found an empty storefront between a laundromat and a bakery and turned it into Cruz Flowers 2. I took a job moving boxes in a warehouse where the loudest thing was a radio and the most dangerous thing was a forklift with a bad attitude. I learned the quiet labor of anonymous days: clock in, lift, stack, sign, share a smoke with a man who had nothing to trade but a good joke. Sometimes the past mailed us a letter. Once a plain glass vase arrived with a single peony and a photograph of the Brooklyn Bridge screwed into blue evening. On the back, my father's handwriting: be a man, not a rumor. We put the photo on a shelf and the peony near the register, and the shop smelled like the kind of mercy you have to keep choosing. It wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. Some nights a car paused too long at the end of our street and my heart remembered its old emergency. I kept my temper folded and my hands clean. Carter texted a weather report in code every couple of weeks. Skis clearing, watch the wind, you're off the board for now. We practiced boring like it was a martial art. One late afternoon in early spring, Elena had soil on her palms and a strand of hair stuck to her cheek. The yard was a map of plastic pots and intentions. She looked up at me with that first-night steadiness. What now? She asked. Now I ask you something I should have asked when candles were our only light. I went inside and came back with a velvet box that used to live in my mother's drawer. I don't remember her voice well, but I remember the ring, an oval, simple and stubborn. I opened it with hands that did not shake. I don't have vows, I said. I have work. I will make coffee. I will turn the back light on before the front. I will bring lilies when I'm wrong and roses when I'm not. I will arrive when I say I will. I will leave what should be left. I will be a man, not a rumor. She didn't look at the ring. She looked at me like a verdict. Then she held out her hand, and I slid my mother's stubborn oval onto her finger. It fit, as if it had been waiting for a different city, a different woman, a different chance to be honest. We didn't tell the town for a week. We just wore the news like good weather. When we did tell them, the bakery gave us a crooked cake that tasted like joy and sugar and a little flour in the air. The laundromat lady hugged Elena too long and cried in a way that made me look away and swallow. A month later, New York remembered us. It always does. A man with a crisp haircut and shoes that hated rain came into the shop and asked for orchids like he was ordering compliance. He glanced at Elena's ring and then at me. You changed your address, he said, voice polite, eyes not. People miss you. People mistake me for a habit, I said. I'm not. Habits are harder to quit than men. Not this time. He smiled a mapped smile, left a card without a name, and told the bell goodbye with the back of his hand. That night I sat at the table and turned the card over. Blank. Of course. What do we do? Elena asked. Live, I said, and keep the handles sharp. We tightened our rehearsals. She changed locks I had already changed. I walked the block at odd hours and met the neighbors' dogs better than their husbands. A delivery guy told me there'd been a black SUV circling the strip 2 afternoons in a row. Carter texted, "Gusts tonight, don't play hero." I texted back, "Never was the part." He sent a thumbs up I pretended not to appreciate. They tried again on a Thursday at closing, because Thursdays pretend to be harmless. 2 men. The bell tattled. Elena's hand drifted toward the shears without looking. My body did the math of the room, the distance to the back, the reach of the taller guy's jacket, the way his eyes measured the register like a promise. "What time do you close?" he asked. "Now," Elena said. "We just need a minute," he said, smiling too nicely at her, not at me. "You're out," I told him. "Take your minute to the sidewalk." He shifted, the way a man does when he's about to mistake himself for gravity. I stepped, turned, redirected, let his wrist teach his shoulder humility. The second one reached and found air, then elbow, then the educational value of a display table full of peonies that refused to apologize for existing. We left them with their breath and their arguments and the careful impression of a city that had run out of patience for imported courage. After, Elena locked the door and leaned her forehead against the glass. I put my palm between her and the cold, the way you shelter a match. We didn't speak for a full minute because prayer doesn't always need words. "You okay?" I asked finally. She nodded. "You?" "I will be when you laugh at me for how dramatic I'm being." She laughed on cue. The room forgave us both. The day we married, it rained in a clean, honest way. We signed papers with a clerk who had seen enough stories to stop asking for the whole plot. Mrs. Pirelli mailed lilies across state lines like contraband comfort. My father sent a note on heavy paper with a pen that knew what it was doing. You chose. Be a man. Not a rumor. No signature. He didn't need one. Sometimes at night, when the house is quiet and the yard smells like wet dirt, I listen for the old city and hear only the soft argument of rain on siding. I think about the boy I was, and the blade my father forged, and the man who learned to put the knife down and pick up flowers. I think about Elena's first come and her last yes, and every small daily vote we cast for a life that doesn't apologize for existing. If you need an ending, take this one. We don't outrun the past. We outlast its voice. We keep the door rehearsed and the coffee strong. We make room for apologies that smell like lilies and truths that look like roses cut on the bias. When the power goes out, I turn the back light on before the front and find her hand in the dark. The world is large and the night is larger, but we carry the smallest, sharpest tool there is. A choice made quietly, again and again. We burn sometimes. Mostly, we bloom.